up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Kinda Different, a podcast where we dive into innovation in dentistry. We connect with some of the most amazing guests that are out there doing amazing things in this profession. And we also talk about how we can make dental care more human. I am Dr. Matt Allen, CEO and co-founder of DifferentKind and your host for Kinda Different. And I am super, super excited today to have Jonathan Ratz on with us, the CEO and founder of Archy. I'm really excited for him to tell you a little bit more about what Archy is, and his background is really fascinating. I think he'll have some really interesting insights on how we continue to bring innovation into the dental space. Married to a dentist, so obviously knows it, very well, probably better than even in some of us sometimes that are dentists, right? Like when you're married to a dentist, you experience it differently. So Jonathan, thanks so much for taking the time today to join us. Would love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit more and tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Sure. Thank you, Matt, for having me. Like I said, my name is Jonathan and Archy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Archy. I am originally coming from the tech background, used to work at two small companies you might have heard of, Uber and Facebook. And like you said, I'm married to a dentist. My wife owns a practice here in the Bay Area. And actually, she's the reason behind me starting Archy. Like you said, I discovered a lot of pain points that dental practices have to go through. And that what led me to say, like, how can we bring technology in the field of dentistry? How can we help? And if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would be in the dental field today, I probably would have told you no. But now I'm actually very excited to be here, to be looking to help dentists and actually to be speaking with you today.
Awesome. Well, tell us just a little bit more about Archy, just so that everyone kind of has an idea of what Archy is, kind of what you've been building, and what you hope to some of those pain points that you hope to solve for dentists.
Sure. So Archy is an all-in-one cloud-based practice management software. What we aim to do is to be the one platform for a dental practice to run your entire business, from communicating with your patient, booking appointment, charting, treatment planning, insurance claims, billing, payments, as well as managing your employees and payroll. Why did we do this? One, because to date, as you know, Matt, still most dental practices are using a server which requires backups and all of that pain. Often dental practices use between 5 to 10 different software to run their business, bringing complexity, inefficiency. And when you have to train and retrain your employees, that's another problem. So that's where we bring everything into one. And three, it's actually automation. How can we help remove some of those tasks that are currently very manual, error prone? Yeah. Everybody makes mistakes, but those can be automated. And finally, the problem we're also trying to help with is staffing. Since COVID, we know that almost every dental practice is trying to hire someone today. And many people tell me sometimes, like, are you going to put people out of job with Archy? And I'm like, no, we are not. Right now, the problem is the other way around. Dental practice cannot find people to fill in those seats. And so if we can bring technology to potentially remove the need to find that extra person, it actually will bring efficiency for everyone.
I love it. That's a great background, and I think a great primer for all of us. And I think your perspective on innovation, like you mentioned, given your background, is really interesting because you have this different perspective coming from the world of tech, and how other types of businesses solve problems. And so that's really where I'd love to start as we think about innovation in general, right? Is what specifically have you learned from those other industries that you are kind of trying to bring specifically to dental care? I think you may have mentioned just some ideas on that, but like, how are you operationalizing that within Archy and within your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because as we build Archy, we do a lot of research. Of course, we look at every software out there. We do a lot of research with front office manager, dental assistant, hygienist, doctors, to really understand the pain points. And often what we hear is, oh, this is how we have been doing the same task for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm like, that's great. What I want to understand is you want to go from point A to point B with your task.
Yeah.
You can tell us how you have been doing it. We might come up with a different way that actually is more efficient. And some tiny details I like to give is, if you look at a lot of different software today in the market and you want to search for a patient, sometimes when you have to search for a patient, you search by first name or last name or date of birth. If you're talking to someone like me with an accent and you're like, I don't understand the name, but a date of birth is easier or a phone number is easier. Well, right now, in many other software, if you want to search by phone number, you have to make sure you click on the phone number field and type a phone number. Well, with Archy, that's a tiny details, but in most of the software we use today, you usually have a single search bar. If you're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Google, you have a search bar, you can type what you want. Well, that's what we did with Archy. And it's funny because sometimes the perception is like, oh, that's great. I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
That's a tiny details, but that can give you, like, even with simple tasks like this, searching for a patient, which happen many times a day, if we can bring efficiency there. And again, I picked on the easiest one. There is more. And this is where now we also are seeing AI coming in. How can we help with AI to bring efficiency, remove the need for someone to make a decision based on assumptions or factors that that person assumed, when actually AI could be a bit, not necessarily smarter, but take more key information to make that decision. And finally, the cloud. It's interesting to date. I still get questions like, why the cloud? Why is cloud better than server? And here I won't necessarily go into all the details, but everything we do in our day-to-day nowadays is pretty much in the cloud. Yet in dentistry, it's not the case. And if you look at other medical fields, they have already moved to the cloud. And that's interesting that dentistry didn't get there yet. And I think with COVID, there is a realization that when many dental practices, or most dental practices, had to close in 2020 for about 3 months, of like, I cannot access my data. Some practices will say I can because they have a remote desktop or they use a VPN if they're a bit more technically savvy. But most were like, I don't have access to my data. My staff is at home right now because they cannot be in the practice. Well, cloud solve all of this pretty much.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think a lot of that, comes down to like customer empathy, right? And I think that that's one of the things certainly that tech seems to do really well in general. If we're talking about, some of those bigger type of kind of tech giants, right? Where they really do have, excellent customer, experience, research, all of that stuff. And I do think that that kind of empathy for the small details, like you're mentioning of, hey, if this is more efficient than this, if this helps me understand where to click more than this, right? Like those are the kinds of things that take software that's kind of frustrating to use, at least in my perception, and make it a delight to use, right? And I think that you bringing that background into Archy is really important and really helpful, because I think a lot of dental people have probably gotten used to working with not the most efficient softwares, let's call them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I love that. A question for you, just around like who is specifically inspiring to you. So that was some of the ideas I think that are inspiring to you. Is there a specific company or founder or somebody that you really look up to, or something that kind of drives you to say, oh, we all look up to other people, right? Or all look up to other places that are saying, oh, this person's pushing things beyond that. I'm always fascinated to hear those stories from other founders of like, who are you looking up to in kind of the innovation space as somebody that's making you excited?
My answer is going to be controversial, but I will say it, and I will clarify where the analogy stops. But the company that I'm looking the most to is actually Tesla, and what Elon Musk is doing with Tesla. If you look at the auto industry and the dental industry, there are some similarities. You have dinosaur in dentistry, and them, as well as dinosaur in the auto industry. And being a dinosaur is not a bad thing. But in the car industry, you had GM, Ford. They could have come up with an electric car. They could have come up with new ways of improving the auto industry. They didn't. And Tesla came in and was like, we are going to build a car that's going to be different. Not only is it going to be electrical, but even the way the car is built, with that big screen in the middle where you can control everything. You can control everything from your phone. I mean, it's like a completely different experience. That's actually a similarity with what we are doing with Archy. And again, I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk. That's probably like the...
I'm not out yet. Totally don't think you are,
The boundaries. But with Archy, when we started, we were like, they are dinosaurs. They could have come up with like very good cloud platform all in one, and they didn't. I'm not saying they don't have a cloud platform. I'm saying they didn't necessarily... They basically brought what they had on-prem with a server to the cloud without looking at how we improve the experience. And so that's the big analogy. I am a big fan of Tesla. I think they are disrupting, and even like the entire process, how they sell a car. And here it's I wanted to do something similar, but it doesn't really work out in dentistry, where you can buy your Tesla online without having to spend time negotiating with a car salesman. And the entire process, I personally never like negotiating with a car salesman. No disrespect to them. And so those are changes where now we see other car industry or auto company are moving towards like, hey, you can buy online. So it's an inspiring company. They are shaking things up, and with Archie, we're trying to do the same in dentistry.
I love it. I love it. Certainly, yeah, that disruptive element, I think we can all agree on whether or not people, agree with or disagree with Elon Musk or whatever. We can certainly all agree with the fact that Tesla is disrupting things. You don't have to look too far to see that. So appreciate that insight there. Question just for you, as you think about yourself, I'd love to kind of move to the connection piece right here. So you mentioned, that your wife is a dentist. I think it's always interesting to put ourselves in the shoes of the patient. And so I would love to just hear from you, like thinking about your healthcare experience, dental care experience in general. Would love to just hear a story from you about like your most formative experience as a patient. What was that? What did it kind of tell you? How did you understand that, et cetera?
So in the dental field, it's interesting because actually my wife has been my doctor pretty much since I moved to the US from France. So I have a very particular experience with dentistry.
Yeah.
But I will say, personally, as a patient, it's all about connection, actually, and people in general have a choice on which dentist, which doctor they want to see. Of course, there is insurance involved, but they want to feel that they trust the doctor, dentist, or again, doctor they are going to see. It's about transparency. It's about being clear. And we know the cost in the US for medical and dental can be high or sometimes low, depending on the perspective you're at, and again, if insurances are involved. But I think transparency, communication, being able to communicate clearly. I have seen actually sometimes doctors or dentists using technical terms or dental terms where I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And we see actually a trend now where dentists are trying to communicate in ways that patient can understand and get that trust so they can actually do their treatment plan and do the procedure that are recommended. So then it's all about, I think it's a matter of creating connection. It starts from like the time you book an appointment to the time you check out and then rebook the next recall or next appointment.
Totally. I love that. Are you familiar with the Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink?
I am not. I'm not.
It reminds me of this, right? From the perspective of, he talks in that book about how they look at malpractice suits against doctors. And literally what they've done some studies where they like essentially took just a short snippet of what the doctor was saying, like literally 40 seconds, right? And they were able to essentially take the words out of it kind of, so you only hear tones and how things are going. And they can really accurately predict which doctors are going to, are more likely to get sued compared to those that are not, just based on their tone of voice and how they're talking to patients, right? And it's all this idea of like power dynamics, and if you're talking down to someone, versus being curious and whatever, because, he says in that book, like, people don't sue doctors they like, right? Even if something bad happens. And so I think that's a really interesting point, that you're making there around, so much of it just comes down to that connection piece, that trust piece, that transparency, all of those things, right? Which I'm a huge believer in, obviously, as well. And I love hearing that from you. So that's awesome. One of the things that I always love to hear, especially from people who are pushing the boundaries, who are innovating, whatever, that inevitably comes with challenges. And so I would love to hear from you, just like, what's one of the biggest challenges you're facing right now? And how do you imagine yourself overcoming it? Like, what are some of the ideas that you have in terms of, hey, here's how I'm systematically thinking about how I can overcome this challenge that I might be facing right now?
I mean, there are actually two challenges. One is that right now, since we're a cloud-based platform, not everybody has an interest to see the cloud growing, and more specifically, some IT companies, to name them, because they are actually, their bread and butter is to help and support a dental practice with their server, their backup. They usually can sell all of that equipment. Having said that, there are actually amazing IT company out there who are actually evolving and moving, promoting the cloud. And the way I say it is, dentists in general are not always tech savvy. And so it's actually, I'm not saying you don't need an IT company. Therefore, like, cloud and IT company can work together for security reasons, for, many reasons. And so, but yet there are still a lot of IT companies right now that actually will talk badly about the cloud just to protect their own interests. That's number one. Number two is actually breaking habits. Again, when we see, Archie brings efficiency, but like everything, change is hard. It takes some time, and usually like we see it takes about a month, can go up to 2 months for people to change their habits and get used to that efficiency that we are bringing. But we have been, let's say, an office manager doing the same thing for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Having a brand new software, brand new experience is challenging. And so we always tell our customers when they're on board, like, don't worry, we are with you. We are going to help you. That first month is probably going to be bumpy for you to get up to speed, change your habits, but you will get there, and then you will see the fruit and benefit of having Archie.
You've mentioned several times this idea of change management, right? Which I think is one of the hard things about being an innovator, right? Like you bring this amazing product, you've built all, you've done all the research, right? Whatever. And then not only do you have to, build that software, roll it out, do all those things, but now you have to, you're involved in change management, right? Which is very challenging. So I love that. And I love some of that, right? I think, especially in that initial stage that you're talking about of creating expectations, right? It might be hard for the first month, right? That's good expectation management, at least it seems like to me. You're not saying, hey, from day one, you're just going to be, swimming in the glorious Mediterranean Sea and enjoying yourself here, right? Like it's going to be challenging. Right. The waters will be a little bit choppy. So,
and if I can make the same analogy as I did with Tesla earlier, when you get a Tesla from a gas car, there are changes. Like your door handle is different. Just opening the door, you have to get that habit. You don't turn on and off your car. There is no keys. You see, it's like at first it's a bit confusing. It doesn't necessarily take a month to get used to speed to use a Tesla, but the first few times it's actually confusing. The car starts slowing down as you stop accelerating. I mean, that change takes time with everything, whether it's software or anything we do in our day to day.
Totally. I totally appreciate that analogy. Thank you for sharing. And I love your perspective on that, right? Of as we bring more innovative things to the dental world in general, we're going to have to solve that problem of change management, and always interesting to hear how people are doing it. So thanks for sharing. Let's move on to making dental care more human and thinking about, how do we create that trust and that transparency and, some of those things that you're doing or that you were just talking about as well. One of the things that I think is interesting, you mentioned medicine earlier in terms of they've all moved to the cloud and whatever. When you think about just the patient experience in general, what's one thing that you think medicine has maybe gotten right that dentistry could learn from? Or like alternatively, what's one thing that you feel like, hey, they've been doing this for a while and it hasn't worked, and here's how we could learn from that and not step into the same pitfalls in dentistry?
There is a lot there. And if we look, it starts first with new patient, or like like you said, the patient experience of like booking an appointment. In medical right now, for most, I would say, doctors, you can book your appointment online.
Yeah.
In dentistry, it's not there yet. But when you look actually at statistics, a lot of people will book their appointments in the evening after their working hours at night when the practice is closed. And so we see it actually, we now offer online booking where patients can self-book their appointments. And that actually has seen an uptick in appointment booking and so on for our customers, and not just our customers, like the trend in general in dentistry. Now, another thing that medical did better, and I would love to see this in dentistry, but I'm not optimistic, is actually consolidation and standardization. Right now, a patient might go see a pediatric dentist as a kid and then grow up and now go see a generalist. Might need to see a specialist. There is no easy way to really send those patient information. I mean, I see it with my own wife and my own practice. The number of letters, referral letters, or like, thank you for sending this patient, and then you have like X-ray printed, and we are in a digital world, yet we still have a lot of snail mail being sent. And if you want to do a referral, you still have to print, and there is like lack of standardization among softwares, among even insurance to clearinghouse and so on. So I would love to see that. I think medical is actually doing better in that sense. And again, I am not necessarily as optimistic right now, but I hope we'll get there.
Totally. Yeah, no, I would love to. We should chat about that more over a beer. I definitely have a lot of thoughts on that as well, and would love to. Maybe we'll just have you back on in a later episode, and we'll just do it over a beer together on the podcast, right? So
sounds good.
I love that. Cool. So one of the things that I think, last question here that would love to hear from you. our company, DifferentKind, right? Like intentionally named it that because I think we see a lot of the same things that you do, right? Like we want to help dentistry become different than historically has been. We also want to make it kinder. So when you think about that in terms of what you're building with Archy, how are you making dental care different with Archy, and how are you making it kinder?
How we make it different, first, it starts with how we build our product. We care about the user experience. And I'm not saying Archie looks prettier than the software. At the end, that's a personal judgment.
Yeah.
But it's like efficiency, easier to use. So the way I see it often is because staffing is an issue currently, dentists have to find new people to fill in those seats, meaning bring people who don't have the dental experience. How do we make this kinder? By making a software where if you come from the non-dental field, you should be able to, let's say, book an appointment within your first few hours working in a dental practice. And right now, it's not the case. And I will say my own experience when I did help my wife in her practice, I had Post-its in front of me with CDT code to tell me, like, new patient, here are the codes that needs to be added in that appointment. Recall, here are the codes. And that's not kind. That's not efficient. Like, it actually felt like I was excluded. I was like, I don't understand this field. And so with the way we build Archie, we want to make it that you don't have to have 20 years of dental experience to do some of the basic tasks. And that's actually helping the practice, helping people feel like, hey, dentistry can be a job for me. Again, not necessarily being a dentist, but working in a dental practice, why not me? And so that's the way it starts. And then there are other areas where we want with kindness in like that connection, that relationship between the patient and the practice, which is often broken. And again, today, most people have a cell phone. They have a computer. There is things that they want to do. And again, you were asking about medical versus dental, paying online for your bills, booking appointments, seeing what you paid for. I mean, there are things where that kindness comes with, like, again, transparency and providing the right tools so communication can be improved and better.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, man, there's so much there. I think like I've seen a lot of the best people, in dentistry, like have customer service backgrounds in other industries, right? Where that skill set is obviously applicable in so many ways, but because of the kind of technological barrier or the technical barrier, not just the technological barrier, but the technical barrier, people don't feel like, oh yeah, I couldn't do that, right? But yeah, you're opening yourself up to a whole different workforce, potentially with even a more amenable skill set to actually those roles, right? If you can make that experience easier for people to manage and you don't feel like, wow, you have to know, like you said,
That's right.
20 years of dentistry to be able to like book an appointment,
And I will say I will stick to like front office manager or people who are actually patient facing with the difficult conversation. You have to pay for your bill for your appointment you just completed. That's not an easy ask, actually, to ask someone to pay. And not everybody is actually good at it. But if you can find a person who has the right skill set, the right mindset to be able to have those in some way difficult conversation with the patient of like, you owe X, well, it's important because, and I have seen actually practices fail sometimes because they are not able to have that conversation with their patient when they check out of like, you need to pay. But yet it's a critical one.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Those interpersonal skills, I think oftentimes I say this all the time, right? But yeah, the interpersonal skills are just as important, if not more than, the technical skills, in our work. And I think sometimes that gets minimized in our industry historically. And I appreciate your help in changing that. So I love it. If people want to learn more about you, more about Archy, they're like, hey, this is super interesting to me, would love to connect, tell us where we could go, how we can find out more. Give us those details.
Yes, so you can actually go to archy.com, archy.com, and you will see actually everything we do. We describe our software. You can actually book a demo if you want to see more and see Archy in action. So archy.com is the place to go. Sweet. And you can also find us in different dental conferences that we attend, usually where we can even demo Archy in person.
Perfect. I love your website, by the way. There's so many cool, like, oh, here's a little walkthrough of like how it is to actually book an appointment or whatever it is, right? Like use the search bar. So some really cool things on there that I don't see on every dental website and really appreciate on yours. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
Very empathetic to the customer and, kind of user experience. So thanks for building it that way. That's pretty cool. Well, Jonathan, this has really been an amazing conversation. Like I said, maybe we'll be back soon having beers, talking about payment methodologies and driving change around, referral systems and whatever. But really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for the work that you're doing in this industry, working to bring innovation change that is centered and rooted in kindness and humanity. So really appreciate you, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much, Matt, for having me.